What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to my channel. In today's video, we are going to talk about a condition called frozen shoulder, which is this sort of strange thing that happens in some people's shoulders where they have an injury, maybe they're kind of protecting it, they've got pain. Oftentimes it's a rotator cuff injury initially, and then they start losing movement. The shoulder joint actually tightens and becomes smaller. The joint capsule becomes smaller and people will lose motion. They can't turn their shoulder out, they can't lift it to the side or up to the front. If that sounds like something that's happening to you, you had an injury, it was painful, and you're starting to notice it getting tighter, you're going to want to go through today's video. I'm going to show the primary exercises you'd start using to regain mobility and hopefully get through this issue faster. Usually what we see in physical therapy is that the person had something that started causing pain in their shoulder. It's often a rotator cuff injury. They tweak their shoulder, grab something, pick something up quickly that was heavier than they thought. It tweaks their rotator cuff. They fall on their arm. And they start by having pain kind of on the top outside of their shoulder. It might go down the side of their arm. And because of that, most people's response is to protect their arm and try not to use it too much. So they'll often kind of keep it in almost like this sling type of position where it's, it looks like it's in a sling. They again, it hurts when they use it, so they'll try not to use it too much. The problem with that is that when you're not using it, you think you're doing the right thing, but what ends up happening is the shoulder joint can tighten. And the problem with frozen shoulder, it goes through these different stages. If it gets into the full-on frozen shoulder, it can last up to 18 months to 2 years before it fully recovers. So if you can identify it early, you can start attacking it and you can get through it maybe in 3 to 6 months versus up to 2 years. With frozen shoulder, it goes through three sort of primary stages. We call it freezing, frozen, and thawing. In the freezing stage, this is when people have pain and it's starting to get tighter. One thing to notice in this that we've seen in the research is that cortisone injections can be really useful. An orthopedic surgeon can give you a cortisone injection into the joint in that first freezing stage, and that can help you get through this issue a lot faster. The other thing to pay attention to is that when people are developing frozen shoulder, they lose range of motion in their shoulder in a specific way, a specific pattern. So what always happens is people will lose mobility first in external rotation, which is turning your shoulder out. If you are noticing that that's getting stiff, if we look with your arms at your side, normally we'll have 70 degrees of external rotation. Sometimes you'll meet people who are developing frozen shoulder where they'll only be able to turn to here. Their arm will just go straight out from their body. So that's the movement that's lost first. Next is abduction, which is raising your arm out to the side. Normally we can go through a full 180 degrees. People with frozen shoulder, they'll often only be able to lift a shoulder level. They'll kind of lift their shoulder blade up like this and compensate. So if you notice that you're having difficulty lifting your arm through full range of motion out to the side, that's something to take note of. It could mean that this condition is developing. And finally is flexion. So flexion is just lifting straight out to the front and overhead. That again should be 180 degrees, basically straight up to the ceiling. People with full-on frozen shoulder where they're in the frozen stage, again, might only get to 90 degrees and they'll kind of compensate. So if you notice yourself having difficulty with that pattern, external rotation, abduction, and then flexion, you really want to try and start addressing it, because again, if it turns into full frozen shoulder and gets into that frozen stage, it can last up to 1.5 to 2 years before it gets better. If you notice that happening, you're catching it early, think about that cortisone injection with an orthopedic surgeon, go see your doctor, and then along with that, implement the exercises that I'm going to show in the video. For the exercises, we're basically going to look at those 3 movements that are limited in people with frozen shoulder. We're not going to do much for strengthening. Really, you just want to focus on mobility with this condition early on. So you want to find a tool at home. I've got an umbrella here. You could use a broom, a golf club, anything like that you can use to kind of use one. We're going to use our healthy arm. I'm going to pretend like my right arm has the frozen shoulder going on. My left arm is basically going to help mobilize my right arm. So external rotation is the most affected movement with frozen shoulder, so we're going to start there. With my umbrella, I'm going to hold it with both of my palms up and my elbows at my side. Now what's going to happen is my left arm is going to push the umbrella and move my right arm as far as it'll go. So my left arm is doing all the work, my right arm's just kind of going along for the ride. So you can see my left arm is pushing my right arm into external rotation. Now the key thing with this, and the thing that people always mess up when they have tightness in their shoulder, because they don't have a lot of movement in their shoulder, they'll straighten their elbow to try and get more range of motion. Don't do that. You want to keep your elbow at 90 degrees and in at your side. Only go as far as your shoulder will rotate. Don't start straightening your elbow to try and get more range of motion. Just move as far as your shoulder will let you. It's just supposed to be a pure rotational movement in the shoulder. So what we have people do is go out, find the spot where it kind of stops, and then hold it there. Maybe hold for 10 to 20 seconds. You can hold even longer. For joints, they often like to be stretched longer. You can go up to 2 to 3 minutes. Just hold it there and let that joint slowly stretch. Let the joint capsule slowly stretch. Okay, so that's the first one, external rotation. It's where we really want to have people focus early on because it's the movement that is most severely affected. Next, we're going to look at abduction. This is the movement that's affected second when we're looking at frozen shoulders. So we had external rotation, now abduction. So I'm going to use my umbrella again. With my affected arm, I'm going to hold on the end of whatever tool I've got at home with my thumb up. Okay, having the thumb up will help the shoulder move more easily. Again, my left arm is going to help with the movement. With abduction, my arm is going to go out away from my side, and my left arm is going to help. I might need to hold down a little bit farther. My left arm is going to help lift my right arm. So I'm trying to go out to the side. As I mentioned, a lot of people will compensate and try to lift their shoulder blade. So if you notice that happening, look in a mirror if you need to, but try to kind of keep your shoulder blade down a little bit. You're not holding it down really hard, but just try not to let it do this. So using that left arm to lift up, go through that range of motion, and you can just do reps like that. And then, you can get to the top and find that position where you have some discomfort. Try to hold there for a little bit. Just let that joint capsule stretch. Okay, you're just going to work through repetitions like that to help improve abduction range of motion and joint capsule flexibility. Our final movement is flexion. I'm going to show 2 variations for this. The first one will be again with our umbrella or whatever tool we've got. I'm going to stand to the side so you can see this. I'm going to have my affected arm on the end, thumb up again. This time, instead of my arm going to the side like I did for abduction, my arm's just going to go straight up to the front. And because this might be painful to do on my own with the involved arm, I'm going to use my left arm to help guide that and even push it to where it gets tight. That's the thing. Sometimes people get tight and they can't use their own muscles to lift up here. It's just difficult. So using the other arm, I can push that arm up into that position where it's stretching the joint capsule and kind of go through reps like that. So same as all the other ones, I could sit here and, maybe warm it up, do 10 to 15 repetitions. As it gets moving more freely, I might get up and just do some where I hold here at the top and let the joint stretch. Another way you can do this is just to lay on your back. Again, my right arm is the affected arm. So what I'm going to do is reach up as high as I can. And if you have a hard time doing this, on your own, oftentimes this is really painful to kind of move your arm on its own when this is developing. You'd use the other arm this is called active assisted range of motion. So my left arm is going to help my right, just like we were doing with the umbrella. So I'm going to hold at my wrist and use my left arm to guide my right arm overhead into flexion. And again, I would just find that spot where I've got sort of mild to moderate discomfort, and then I would hold there as long as I can. And like I said, joints tend to do well with longer holds. So we even have some frozen shoulder studies where they had people go up and hold like this for 10 minutes, and they did that 3 times a day. So, that's a total of 30 minutes of stretching in the day. That's what you really want to try and shoot for with joints, these longer hold times. The more time you can spend at that end position, the better it's going to do in terms of stretching the joint. Okay, so those are the three movements you want to focus on with frozen shoulder. We're going to start with external rotation, then go to abduction, and then flexion last. So try to incorporate these every day. Like I said, spend time holding in each position. Joints do better with longer holds, not these 15 to 30 seconds type holds like we do for muscles. So if you can get into that position, find a spot where it's tolerable, try to stay there from 2 to 10 minutes, and you should notice your range of motion improving over time. As always, let me know if you have any questions in the comments section, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye.